The name Medicine Hat comes from the native word Saamis, which means medicine man's hat. People in Medicine Hat, Alberta, often refer to themselves as Medicine Hatters or Hatters. More than 60,000 people live in this small city, where everyone knows what everyone else is doing. With a relatively low crime rate and almost no homicides, it is undoubtedly one of the best places to raise your family in a safe environment. There may be disagreement among the Richardson family's loved ones because 3 family members were heinously slain in 2006 while living in Medicine Hat, Alberta. The killer was closer to home than anyone thought. In April 2006, Mark Richardson and his wife Deborah were living a typical middle-class existence with their 2 children, Jasmine and Jacob. Jasmine Richardson, born in 1993, was generally considered a well-rounded, responsible child by all accounts. In addition to her high grades, she was an active member of her social community. When Jasmine was growing up, she was a girly girl who loved pretty things. There was a canopy bed in her bedroom, and she was enchanted by everything pink and princess-themed. However, as Jasmine began to attend middle school at 12 years old, things started to change for her. At about this time, Jasmine and her friends began to doubt some things taught to them in their religion classes at the Catholic school they attended. They started to question their teachers and parents. It wasn't long before they started dabbling in Wicca and became interested in Gothic culture. Her musical taste changed over time from pop music lover to a rock and heavy metal fan. There was an almost overnight change in Jasmine's wardrobe from pink to black. As she began to line her eyes with black eyeliner, she made sure that it was thick and heavy. However, what bothered Deborah and Mark Richardson the most was that Jasmine had started hanging out with a new group of friends. It wasn't long before she began spending most of her time with people who shared the same viewpoint. Older men with similar views were among Jasmine's new friends. It didn't take long for the Richardsons to start receiving calls from Jasmine's school soon after her behavior began to change. Despite Jasmine's excellent grades, the school principals called to inform them that she refused to follow their dress code. She would draw pentagrams on the walls and defile her uniform. There came a time when Jasmine stopped showing up to school and would only show up when she felt like it. In spite of being only 12 years old, Jasmine developed physically faster than other girls her age, and she wore makeup to make herself appear older than she was. Jasmine was mistaken by many people, especially men, for 16 years old when she was actually in 6th grade because of her looks. When Jasmine was 12 years old, MySpace was the most popular social media site, and she created an account with her age set to 16 on it. Besides creating accounts on vampirefreaks.com and Zorpia, Jasmine also made multiple accounts on online social networking sites such as Facebook and Twitter. As these websites encouraged users to choose their usernames, Jasmine chose names like Runaway Devil. Deborah and Mark Richardson were doing everything possible to keep their 12-year-old daughter safe and under control. Nevertheless, their efforts were unsuccessful after Jasmine managed to sneak into a punk rock concert in 2006. On that night, Jasmine met 23-year-old Jeremy STEINKE. Jeremy was under the impression Jasmine was 16 years old at the time, which still does not make the age difference right, but at the same time, he was unaware of how young she was. Soon after they met, Jeremy learned her actual age and still chose to stay with her. There was no doubt in his mind that Jeremy STEINKE was a 300-year-old werewolf. Jeremy's upbringing wasn't as cozy as that of his underage girlfriend. As a child, Jeremy was raised by an alcoholic mother who brought home a number of abusive men. When Jeremy was a teenager, his stepfather struck him, and he was hospitalized and diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. He started to live a gothic lifestyle when he turned 18 years old and wore a vial of blood as part of his attire. Jeremy explained to Jasmine that he wore the blood to survive because he was a werewolf. Following their meeting at a concert, they kept in touch by phone and email. Their favorite site for communication was vampirefreaks.com. According to her profile on vampirefreaks.com, Jasmine was bisexual, Wiccan, nocturnal, awkward, and insane. Her hobbies were dark poetry, criminal psychology, and the study of human anatomy, and her hero was the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeremy's interests included pain, kinky fetishes, razor blades, blood, and scarification. When Jasmine began walking around with a cross upside down on her forehead, Deborah and Mark lost their cool and started fighting. They hacked into Jasmine's computer while she was at school. Deborah and Mark found all Jasmine's messages with Jeremy since they met. When Deborah and Mark pulled up Jeremy's profile on vampirefreaks.com, they were shocked to discover that he was 23 years old. Deborah and Mark explained to Jasmine that afternoon why it was entirely inappropriate for her to talk to a grown man. Jasmine still sneaked around to see her grown boyfriend despite what her parents told her. Despite what her parents said, she would use school computers and friends' computers to communicate with him. When Jasmine played hooky from school, Jeremy and Jasmine would spend hours discussing their devious plan to stay together forever every time Jasmine played hooky from classes. Jasmine detailed her plan to kill her entire family in messages and in person, and Jeremy quickly agreed. Their instant messages discussed Jasmine's family's murder. Once, Jasmine wrote, "I have this plan. It begins with me killing them and ends with me living with you." Jeremy responded, "I love your plan, but we need to get a little more creative with details and stuff." Following the finalization of Jasmine and Jeremy's plan for the murder of her family, they chose the date, April 23, 2006, to commit the murder. Before committing their murders, the future killers watched Natural Born Killers starring Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis. In this film, two traumatized children fall in love and become deranged serial killers, shamelessly glorified by the news as they murdered innocent bystanders. In a way, it was like watching a rehearsal for the couple. After their movie, Jasmine and Jeremy drank and did drugs before taking her family's lives. As Jeremy snuck into Jasmine's parents' basement, Deborah heard a noise downstairs and headed downstairs to investigate. When she reached the first floor, Jeremy stabbed her 12 times. The commotion in the living room prompted Mark to rush down to his wife's aid. Mark armed himself with a screwdriver on the way down. Mark and Jeremy fought viciously, and Mark had the upper hand at one point, but his screwdriver was no match for Jeremy's knife, resulting in Mark's death. Mark was killed from 24 stab wounds. While Mark was dying, he made eye contact with his murderer and whispered, "Why?" Jeremy STEINKE responded, "It was what your daughter wanted." After Jeremy confirmed Mark and Deborah were dead, he walked upstairs. He found Jasmine comforting Jacob in his bedroom. Both Jasmine and Jeremy denied responsibility for killing the 8-year-old boy in their confession after police apprehended them. No matter who stabbed Jacob, the outcome was the same. In addition to a slit throat, he received several stab wounds. Jeremy and Jasmine then fled the scene and were seen having sex in a tub filled with their blood in a friend's apartment. One of Jacob's school friends called the Richardson house around 1 p.m., but no one answered, so he walked to his friend's house to check if anyone was home. After knocking, he peered into the windows of the Richardson residence. He saw Mark and Deborah's lifeless bodies and blood inside his friend's house. The little boy ran home to his mother, who thought her son was lying. Sadly, she found out he was not when she looked through the windows and saw the same awful scene. Upon arriving at the scene, investigators noticed someone was missing. Jasmine Richardson, Mark and Deborah's 12-year-old daughter, wasn't there. At the time, they had no idea where Jasmine was. She was possibly involved in the murders, or she could have been a victim herself. They wouldn't know what she was up to until investigators tracked her down, but they had to make sure she was safe. Jasmine's disappearance led to a massive search in Medicine Hat. During the investigation, police searched Jasmine's locker at school. Investigators were looking for any evidence that would lead to Jasmine, but what they found shocked them. The police discovered a crude drawing in Jasmine's locker depicting a horrific image. In the picture, while at a family picnic, a girl purposely pours gasoline into the sprinklers, causing her family to burn to death. As her family burns, the cartoon girl chuckles as she escapes in her boyfriend's truck. As a result of the drawing, suspicions shifted completely, and Jasmine Richardson became a suspect instead of a victim. Luckily, Jasmine and Jeremy weren't master criminals, and the police quickly tracked them down. Even at the time of their arrest, the couple joked around about the murders. They were found near Medicine Hat at a high school in Saskatchewan. Due to her young age, Canadian law required Jasmine to use the pseudonym JR to hide her identity. Also, she wasn't tried as an adult. Even though she received the maximum sentence for a child her age, she only received 10 years. Her term also included the time she had already spent in jail awaiting trial. A psychological examination at the Pediatric Psychiatric Hospital diagnosed Jasmine with a conduct disorder while in custody. The murders took place when Jeremy was 23, so he was in no position to get off lightly. He was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. Jeremy told the driver taking him to prison that Jasmine meant the world to him, and what he did was the ultimate declaration of his love for her. It seemed he didn't even comprehend the seriousness of what he had done, as Jeremy admitted to everything he had done. He even revealed to the driver his intentions to marry Jasmine after they were released from prison. Although Jasmine and Jeremy were arrested and imprisoned, their love for one another did not wane. They corresponded by letter since they had no other means of communication. In a letter, Jasmine accepted Jeremy's marriage proposal. Despite their best efforts, their relationship could not endure the rigors of incarceration, and the two separated while in prison. The relationship that had been significant enough to kill for dwindled after only a short while. Jasmine's doctors felt that she might be able to rebuild her life without her relationship with Jeremy STEINKE. She entered therapy with a diagnosis of dependency issues and anxiety disorders. Eventually, Jasmine made significant progress in her rehabilitation and expressed regret for her crimes. So, what do you think about the murders of the Richardson family? Who do you think killed little Jacob Richardson? Was it his big sister Jasmine, or was it her older boyfriend, Jeremy STEINKE? What would you like to see covered next? And don't forget to hit the bell icon and subscribe.